All right. Hi, class. Welcome. This is our very first e-lesson, at least in this sort of video format. Um, this is exciting. I know we all much rather be in the classroom, but I'm excited to engage in teaching and learning with you in this sort of new way. It's all about perspective, right? Um, so, we're all in this boat together, trying to figure it out. Um, I'm sure there'll be some bumps along the way, but we'll get there. Um, so please don't hesitate to reach out to me, email me if you have any questions, concerns, whatever. Um, then we can hop on a Google Hangout if we need to and talk. And I'm every day I'm posting office hours basically where this is just um, a time frame where I will be immediately close to a laptop or my phone to respond to emails as quickly as possible. But really, I should be able to do that throughout the whole day if you have any questions. So again, please don't hesitate to reach out and email me. So before we get started, just a little tip as you watch this video and other videos in the future. Um, you should be taking notes as you normally would. As I go through the lesson, I will highlight the important material that you should definitely write down, but um, I'm not posting the slides themselves since here it is for you. Um, that is your responsibility to take the notes from this lesson. But like I said, I'll highlight what is most important, but it's up to you to write down as much as you feel is necessary. Um, this is that skill of note taking, right? But you have the luxury of pausing this video if at any moment you need to sort of catch up in your notes. Just press pause and then you can resume the video. Sound good? So let's begin. We are moving into a new topic. While you are finishing your martyr projects and examining the fortitude with which those individuals led their lives, we are starting to move into our next virtue, which, as you can see, is the virtue of temperance. And so on this slide, I have a few points about temperance, but this is all stuff we talked about in class before. You should already know what this word temperance means. But if not, feel free to jot some of this down. As we've discussed before, temperance means moderation. It means not doing things or exposing ourselves to something in abundance or excessively. Um, we have the temperance movement in U.S. history, which you've probably learned about, where alcohol consumption was sought to be tempered or moderated or really cut out altogether. Um, but more than anything else, temperance has a close association with wholeness and well being. Practicing temperance, practicing everything in moderation, helps keep us healthy and whole human beings. So, before we can even talk about how to practice temperance, how to practice wholeness, we have to kind of talk about what the opposite of that looks like. Because let's be honest with ourselves, generally speaking, which is more common of us? Are we more likely to practice wholeness, temperance, and moderation, or more likely to sometimes go a little overboard and binge watch an entire show of Netflix, right? Um, which is easier to do, which takes less effort or energy. So, in order to talk about that, we have to talk about one of the bad words of the Bible. Yeah, one of the naughty words, and that's everyone's favorite, sin. Um, Hear me out on this. Please, please, please don't tune me out on this lesson on sin. Don't check out mentally. You can listen and still like kind of mentally check out. Fight that temptation. Don't do that. Because my goal is not to come at you with this topic of sin in any sort of negative energy or negative way. Um, I'm not trying to guilt trip you or anything like that. Um, I would hope you would know that by now about me. But this is important. Um, what I hope to do with this lesson is actually provide maybe a new way of thinking about sin um, that maybe you haven't heard before. And actually, it's not even a new way of thinking about sin at all. It's the original meaning of sin from the Bible. But that meaning has been so lost on our modern senses for various reasons. Even for those of us who have been Christians or Catholics our entire lives, we sometimes discount what the Bible is actually saying when it talks about sin. Um, we kind of have this idea that the Bible has this antiquated view of the world, and so it really doesn't have anything to offer. It kind of goes back to, um, that idea of C.S. Lewis. Like God is this guy walking around, who makes sure, we're not having too much fun, right? And that's sort of the misperception about sin. It's this list of uh, bad things I'm not supposed to do, right? Um, While maybe true, um, it's only partially true. It's only in the surface level, and really, that's not even the point. Like we talked about with freedom and law, the Christian moral life isn't about just following a list of rules for the sake of following rules because they're in the book and it's what we have to do. No, it's it's about how can we experience true freedom and well-being and wholeness, right? And how can we experience liberation from those choices and decisions which we make time and time again, but they only end up enslaving us and preventing us from being healthy and whole, right? Those choices and decisions, which, for lack of a better word, are sinful. So let's get into it. Our objective today is to identify the original definition of sin. We're going to have a little fun doing it. Starting off right here, I have the Hebrew word for sin because our Old Testament written in the Hebrew language. So this word is pronounced chata. If we were in class, I would make you all repeat after me, but so go ahead and do it right now. I want you to practice saying this out loud. Say chata. It's one of those fun Hebrew words where you kind of make that guttural sound in the back of your throat like you're trying to spit, right? Chata. Then we have the Koine Greek um, word for sin because our New Testament, written in Koine Greek, it's a dead version of the Greek language. But this word for sin is hamartia. So again, practice saying that out loud, please. Hamartia. See, we're having fun. At least I am. Okay, so I share this with you for one reason. You don't need to write down these two words unless you want to, but write this down. The most basic meaning of the word chata is not even religious at all. It simply means to fail or to miss the goal. Some examples here from the Bible. In Judges chapter 20, verse 16, this author is describing a group of soldiers who are skilled with the slingshot, and they're able to sling a stone at a person's hair and not chata, and not miss the mark, right? Or sort of more figurative and metaphorical way of missing or failing. And Proverbs chapter 19 says, desire without knowledge is not good, and one who moves too hurriedly chatas the way. They miss the way. So this is describing how, if we have something we want, a goal we want to reach, um, but we don't have the knowledge or we don't prepare ourselves to reach that goal, and we move too quickly and too hurriedly to reach that goal, we're going to miss it, right? You're going to miss that goal without the proper knowledge and preparation, right? That's chata. Um, and not even religious at all, right? So, in the Bible, and this is the important part here, write this down. Sin is simply a failure to miss the goal. So, hopefully, you're wondering right now, well, what is the goal, right? Here's our starting point to answer that question. And this goes back to last semester, Catholic social teaching. We start with the presumption that every human is made in the image of God, which simply means, we all bear this reflection of our Creator. And thus, every single person is deserving of love and respect. So, write this down. Sin is a failure to love God and is a failure to love others, to love people. You can look at the Ten Commandments, which captures this perfectly. Numbers 1 through 3 are ways you can fail to love God, but all the rest are ways you can fail to love people, which says a lot. That's 7 to 3 right there, right? So the fact that both types of failure are combined shows that God is connected to our failure to love others. Definitely, we want that. Failing to love people is failing to love God. A sin against people is a sin against God. So sin is a failure to be truly human, to truly be who you were created to be. But it's also a failure to treat other people as truly human as well. Unfortunately, and this is the problem we run into, when we are failing, we don't know it. Or worse, we actually think that we are succeeding, we're thriving, or we're actually doing the right thing. That's the tricky thing about all of this. So write that down. For example, in the book of Exodus, um, before we were even introduced to the story of Moses, um, we see the Pharaoh in Egypt, and this is setting this up for Moses, who he justifies enslaving the entire Hebrew people for the name of a strong economy and a strong national security. This justifies enslaving a whole group of people, right? And then later on, he uses the same justifications, or better, perhaps, rationalizations for killing all the Hebrew baby boys, right? He fears the Hebrews are becoming too numerous and he needs to protect Egyptians, right? Egyptians first. Um, he needs to protect the Egyptian national security. So he uses that to justify killing all the Hebrew baby boys. So, in his mind, he's doing what any good leader or any good pharaoh would do. He's protecting his people. He thinks he's doing the right thing, but this is a massive failure on his part. He is failing. Another example, just real quickly, King Saul. He's hunting down David, who's a young man at this point. So in Saul's mind, he's bringing a criminal to justice, but David hasn't done anything wrong, right? He thinks he's succeeding, or doing the right thing, but this is a failure, right? He's actually failing as a king and as a leader. So again, when we're failing, we either don't know it or worse, we think we're doing the right thing. So write this. Sin is, like I was saying, so much more than just that list of bad things we're not supposed to do. Um, Sin, this word, describes how we deceive ourselves. Um, it describes this process of how we attempt to redefine our failures as success, how we attempt to redefine the bad decisions as good ones. And I think, this is the question I ask, and I think it's obvious that we really suck at judging moral success versus moral failure. Um, we're not able to hold the mirror up to ourselves and be honest with ourselves and say, it's what I'm doing failing or succeeding, right? That's a hard question to ask. Um, Look at the story of Adam and Eve as an example of this. And they're the first humans to fail, right? Um, they were presented with a choice. Are we going to trust that God has our best interest at heart, or are we going to take matters into our own hands, right? Um, so we know the choice they made, and that was a failure on their part. And that failure gets inherited by their sons and their sons and their sons, right? And that gets passed on to us. And we'll talk more later about the word, the term for that inherited failure, um, what we call original sin. Um, but Cain and Abel inherit this. And if you're familiar with the Cain and Abel story, Cain, he's jealous and angry that God favored his brother's sacrifice. And so now he's faced with a similar choice his parents made. Spoiler alert, if you're not familiar with this story, Cain ends up killing his brother. Um, but right before that, God warns him, and this is why I'm sharing this story. So you want to write this as the first appearance of the word chata, the word sin. The first time in the Bible is in this story, right? And you don't need to write the whole verse down, but maybe make a note of Genesis chapter 4, verse 7. God warns Cain. He says, "If you do well, you will not be, or will you not be accepted? And if you do not do well, sin, chata, is lurking at the door. Its desire is for you, but you must master it." I share this with you because this is fascinating to me, that the first appearance of this word sin or failure, it's being depicted as this wild, hungry animal that's just waiting to devour humans, right? It's kind of hiding in the bushes, um, waiting to attack, right? That's how frequent and prevalent sin or failure is in our world, right? Awaiting at every doorstep, right? But we must learn to master our failures, is what God is saying, right? So the Bible is trying to tell us, definitely write this last point down, that our tendency to fail, it runs so deep in who we are as humans. It is so deep in our DNA, this tendency to always fail. Sin, failure, it's rooted in our desires and urges which compel us to act for our own benefit, more specifically at the expense of other people. Um, and we know this is true from our own experience. I'm sure you can think of a time where maybe a choice or decision, you know, that was made, it, it has a ripple effect, right? Um, Hardly ever does a failure, kind of self-contain. It's not an isolated event. It has a ripple effect. It causes a chain reaction of relational breakdowns with the people around us, whether family, friends, close loved ones, right? Um, it's sort of a domino effect. This is why the Apostle Paul in the New Testament describes sin as powers and principalities that enslave us. He talks about how, it's sin has this hold on him that when he wants to do good, he can't, right? Even though he's trying, um, it has just this grip on him, right? So this last part, definitely write down. According to the biblical authors, sin or failure is more than just doing bad things. It is our failures. But this word sin is also describing something. It's describing what it means to be human. What we can call the human condition. Um, this this failure um, and this sort of self-deception that comes with it, right? This is part of what it means to be human. And you might be thinking right now, man, what a downer, right? Um, this is not a pretty picture for us. But I'm not going to leave you there. I wouldn't do that to you. That's not the end of the story, right? This is why Jesus is good news, and we'll end on this. Um, good news. The word gospel literally means good news, right? God became a human who did not fail. He did not sin. He became a human who did not fail to love God, and he did not fail to love people. And so this human took the responsibility of all human failure and all of history and all human failure to ever come. He took that all and he died and resurrected for their failures. And that is very good news, right? So that's where we'll end today. Um, if you have any questions, please email me, shoot me an email. I hope everyone is doing well, taking care of themselves. Um, there are further instructions in the post for today of what to do after you've watched this video. So please go back there and check that out. And I will be hearing from you and hopefully seeing you very soon. All right? Have a good day. Bye.